welcome to 50 Movies in 50 Weeks. I'm your host, Joey Hollywood, and I'm trying to get through all 50 movies in this box set in 50 weeks. It's almost like that's the name of the show. So, the movie I watched today was called The Terror from 1963. And I actually think I remember the first time I watched this movie. I think it was in 2009, and I saw it on the rebooted Elvira movie macabre. I don't remember much about it, honestly, but I've seen it once since then, just because the production of the movie was interesting to me at the time, and I was like, oh, I'll rewatch it. And I recall the movie being just an absolute mess. And while I still think it is a mess, it's not as bad as I recall. The movie is constantly moving. And even when it does get repetitive, there's always like something new and weird added to the scene. The scenes that are repetitive, that they're interesting. This movie, from what I understand, was kind of like, it was the definition of a B movie. Actually, this is more of a definition of a C movie. So while Roger Corman was making his B movies, he was also filming scenes for this on the cheap, since the sets were already there. That's my understanding of the production of this movie. And it stars a very, very young Jack Nicholson and a very, very old Boris Karloff. And actually, it's very interesting to see Jack Nicholson so young, because you can see the seeds of what would eventually become the Jack Nicholson persona. There's still like, he hasn't quite matured into the Jack Nicholson we know and love. But you can just hear him, like, you can hear him talk like this every once in a while, and it's like, oh, it's coming out. He's blossoming. He's blossoming. I think what's interesting about the movie is that it kind of defies what you'd expect from a movie like this. Like, you'd see this movie, you'd see like the basic premise, and you think the logical route would be to set it in England. At least that would be my inclination, especially since like all the characters in the movie speak English, and the only accents you hear in it are English at the very most, mostly American. It's weird that it's set in France, and Jack Nicholson plays a French soldier. So I don't know, it's an odd choice. I'm assuming that the whole reason why he's French is they just had French uniforms for him to wear. That would be in line with the production history of this movie. Jack Nicholson gets separated from his troop, so he's a wandering soldier trying to find the rest of his battalion, or whatever it's called. He runs into this woman who tries to lure him to a watery grave, essentially, and he passes out and is retrieved by a local villager. And there's a lot of scenes of this woman trying to kill Jack Nicholson. And it's always in like, she's always trying to lure him, like, oh, let's kiss and stuff. And then it's always trying to lure him into like a hole, or like just some way for him to fall to his death. And eventually he runs into Boris Karloff because he's tired of sleeping in town. He wants to sleep in the castle with Boris Karloff. And he sees the woman in the window, and he's like, Boris Karloff, who is that woman in the window? And he goes, there is no woman in the window. I have lived here alone for the past 20 years. Did the woman you see, did she look like this? And he shows a portrait of the woman. And he goes, yes, it's that woman. It's her exactly. And he goes, that woman died 20 years ago this very day. And from there, it just gets more and more convoluted. There's so many twists and turns that just kind of don't make any sense at all. But like, once you're that far in the movie, you're kind of locked in for just the insanity that is the rest of it. Decently shot, great sets considering they were meant for different movies. This movie is an interesting anomaly. I think if I really put my mind to it, I could make a much more interesting video than this. But I'm kind of limited by the structure of this series, and plus I have such bigger projects to work on right now. But it's a fun movie. I would actually recommend watching it. I don't know if anyone's ever riffed it. I know Elvira did a video on it. Probably Mr. Lobo did something on it too. I hope Riff Tracks did something on this. But yeah, I like this movie. It's fun. It's pretty bad, but in I would say a good way. And that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Remember, please be kind and rewind.